Everybody, good morning. Brian Good here for the earliest alert. Of course, a lot to break down in the short term, and then we'll get into the longer term as well in a few minutes. Let's look at the visible image from space, satellite. We don't have a lot of light yet to try to pick out where the low clouds and the fog are, but we do have some fog out there and some low clouds. So it's going to be a trend throughout most of the day today. The drizzle is starting to fade away in the most recent radar scans, not as prevalent. So we should begin to get some of the cloud cover begin to break up a bit as we head toward the early afternoon period and some sun rays. I'll make a decision coming up for the midday show whether or not I need to raise the high up from 79. I kept it at 79 for now, betting on the clouds, so we'll linger for a while, but I'll make that analysis again coming up for later on in case we need to warm everybody up a bit more. Let's hope we can. For those that will look forward to that. All right, Nate is gone. Nate's now up here to the northeast part of the country. Zipped on by. Low pressure rainfall front, still dealing with that across the eastern seaboard. Our next system is already waiting for us. It's in the front range of the Rockies, producing snow into Colorado, into portions of Nebraska right now. Now, that's going to produce some severe weather later on today across Kansas and Oklahoma. And then tomorrow, the low will take advantage of the max heating of the day tomorrow afternoon to produce a low-end risk for severe weather across western Kentucky into Illinois. And that's what we're going to focus on. What does that mean for us as we head into the upcoming event? All right. So, in addition to that, quick update on that rainfall that came through. The models did a great job on nailing down where that predecessor band is going to format from the combination of a front dropping in from the north Saturday evening and produce the couple tornado warnings that we had, and also the combination of moisture from Nate all led to that heavy rain event across areas of parkways. Not as much rain to the far south and kind of spotty here locally, but still quite the rain event. Bullbend up at 1.95 inches of rain out of that event there. So a lot of you more than that. Let's get right into the details. Here's the RPM model for today. Shows that we try to break up the clouds a bit. That should get us to the mid-70s, if not lower 80s, depending on the amount of sun. Then tonight, I think if we do see a clear sky building into the area, that will then lead to fog. If you look carefully, you can see hints there in the last couple of frames of the fog expanding in some of the valley areas where the sky is clear out above. Perfect setup for that. That's what we'll be monitoring. Now, in addition to that, there is a boundary that's going to become more of a front like this, kind of like a warm front, if you will. It'll be snaked in. It is going to drop south and then eventually lay kind of like this for tomorrow afternoon. This warm front, which really is a cold front, the way it's moving down over us during the morning hours, but in general, it's very ill-defined. I just want you to realize there is a boundary here. And as always the case, when you get little waves along boundaries like that, they like to track along like a train on the train track. So we got to figure out where that boundary is going to be tomorrow, because that will determine the thunderstorm chances and coverage. Now, the RPM suggests the boundary is going to be just across southern Kentucky, and that is where the thunderstorms will then begin to track throughout the day. Some of those could be on the strong side. Now, they should be elevated in nature, and what I mean by that is the basis of them won't be as slow to the ground. There could be some hail in some cases, but severe weather will be kept to a minimum. And if that were to be the case, if this boundary is to the south, we may end up with several hours of dry weather tomorrow. It really just depends on where that is. So stay tuned for updates on that. Now, one thing that will happen is the boundary will lift north as we get into tomorrow night, angled kind of like this. That will then be ahead of the low pressure. It's moving in across northern areas of St. Louis. This is where the marginal risk of severe weather kicks in tomorrow night at 10 o'clock. It's an issue for them across the Boot Heel of Missouri. Then as that low moves to the east, we will then see everything kind of fade out. There's a bit of activity along the front itself and the low as it passes by and the warm front, but overall we're not expecting big problems as it passes through. There will still be a decent amount of some shear to work with, though. Let me show you. Here's the Schreff model. As you all know, 40 is a good benchmark to work with on severe potential, and you see a couple of ensembles in the Schreff try to hint at it, but the majority of them are averaging out around 30 knots, which is decent. It's very low end, very marginal on the wind shear potential. As far as energy, we're at the time of the year now where 500 to 1,000 capes can get you severe weather. The average there, as you can see, I know it's hard to see, is just below 500, but close to it. Some of the ensembles are a little bit higher. And I think that really just depends if the front is over us, north of us, or south of us, and that's the reason why the models are struggling a bit on the little spikes you see on the cape and instability potential, but we'll monitor that. Overall, this is a marginal setup here for us, and when you look at the cape potential, your storm energy tomorrow afternoon, the NAM model is betting on the idea the front is down here to the south, and this is where you get the little warm sector, right at the marginal risk area, southeast Missouri, and then as we get into overnight hours into early Wednesday, that warm sector moves into central Kentucky. There's, again, just barely enough cape there, but the sounding is coming out with an idea of marginal severe, and it's mainly because the wind shear 0 to 6 kilometers is roughly 44 knots. Again, it's The NAM high res is indicating over that 40 threshold. And there is some energy to work with here, 500 to about 1,000 in some cases of instability. There's not a lot, guys. This is certainly a marginal event, but we'll watch it for a couple that could be on the strong side. Okay, so that's your stormy potential in the short term. Then as we look long term, here is the GFS. Again, here's your high pressure in yellow, low pressure in the green, and this is how the trend is going to be. This is Friday the 13th. We got high pressure control. As we enter this weekend, there is going to be a gap that forms and a low that will dive in. And so this is going to be a front that will drop in. Very positive tilt to the front. It's leaning forward, kind of like the forward slash on your keyboard. That usually is a sign of not a severe weather event. In some cases, it can be really hard for us to get a lot of rain to develop out of that kind of a setup because it's such a strong angle to the tilt. Now, GFS is trying to bring this boundary in here around midday to early afternoon on Sunday. I think that may be too fast as we head into this weekend. And then after it passes by, there's another little dip that's showing up next Tuesday. Overall, dry forecast, but a little dips may try to slow the warming down a bit. And then we get into another dry, extended pattern near the 19th with a lot of storminess and trophiness developing in the Western Canada and the Rockies. We'll see how that plays out in transitions for late month for us. I would expect a lot to happen there. Here's the Euro idea. Again, Friday the 13th this week, high pressure control. Here comes the gap. Notice, though, where it has the boundary, that is actually passing through the overnight hours of Sunday into early of Monday is where it says, and I like that slower idea on the Euro. That means most of the weekend will be dry and warm. High pressure builds it after it. That dip for that next Tuesday is not as dramatic on the Euro. I agree with that. And then as we head into the very end of the time period, you see it does the same thing. Trophiness, storminess, northwest, the Rockies, meanwhile dry here locally. Here's the issue. We've got so many areas of high pressure that dominate our weather. The jet stream is leaving us behind. It's way up here. And this is also leaving the door open for the tropics still, even as we head further into October. And when you look at the indices here, I mean, this PNA, this is the GFS, the PNA is so negative. Even on the Euro, it's very negative. It tries to trend toward a positive value later this month, but when you get to that far of a negative value, you're dealing with the jet stream just leaving us behind here in the East Coast. And therefore, there's not a lot going on. And that's pretty much the story of the long term. So really, tomorrow, that low pressure tracking near us is about the only excitement that we'll have for our area for the next 10 days, it looks like. That's how it all looks today. We'll see how it looks tomorrow.